science fiction, you got two branches. One is science,
Yeah.
and the other is social.
Right.
I'm much more of the 1984 kind of guy. How do the people react to all those things?
Yeah.
And how do they accommodate them?
Yeah.
So that's the part that really fascinates me and I'm interested in.
You did something very interesting with Star Wars, if you think about it. The good guys are the rebels. They're using asymmetric warfare against a highly organized empire. I think we call those guys terrorists. So were you thinking of that at the time?
We're fighting the largest empire in the world.
Right.
And we're just a bunch of hayseeds in coonskin hats. Don't know nothing. The little guys won. The great thing about Star Wars is I had a vessel that I could throw anything into.
Yeah.
You have to create a real world.
Yeah.
And it's a real world that doesn't exist.
Are we losing the soul of Star Wars? Are we losing the heart of Star Wars? And honestly, what the heck does that even mean? Welcome to Star Wars Uplink. What is a Star War? Now, we've got the TV shows, we've got the movies, we've got the video games, we've got the animated TV shows, and that's even before we take into account all of the Legends material that is still influencing a lot of the Star Wars that we get. But now that we've been in the swing of things for 10 years, a little over 10 years now, what is a Star War? If you look on one side of things, you've got pure fan service when you look at something like Obi Wan Kenobi. That series is not really much besides fan service. Fan service in the terms of nostalgia over story, over depth. And then on the complete other side of things, you have this deep, rich political drama of Andor, something that draws from the original inspirations of Star Wars. But what is a Star War? What does it actually mean when you put Star Wars on your title? That's what I'm hoping to answer today, or at least spark some discussion on that idea. Let's go back to the beginning, way back into 1977. Bell bottoms, super clean sci-fi, but wait, there's something new coming out, and it's by this little director named George Lucas. Heavily inspired by the series Flash Gordon, George Lucas wanted to do something in the sci-fi space, but more particularly around the social ideas of sci-fi. Something that also drew a lot of inspiration from the ideas of Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell was very well known in the writer's space, creating the idea of the hero's journey. But until George Lucas, he wasn't really well known in the filmmaking space, which is one of the reasons that Star Wars stood out so well against all of the competition. If you want to deep dive into Joseph Campbell, there are many other great videos, and I would recommend checking those out. But in short, for this particular video, I want to talk about the overarching ideas that Joseph Campbell had that inspired George Lucas in the beginning. In the intro to Hero with 1,000 Faces, this is how Joseph Campbell summarizes it. Quote, "A hero ventures forth from the world of common day into a region of supernatural wonder. Fabulous forces are then encountered and a decisive victory is won. The hero comes back from this mysterious adventure with the power to bestow boons on his fellow man." Basically, the idea that Joseph Campbell is trying to get across is most myths follow a very particular story structure. And as we know, George Lucas wanted this series to be a mythological fantasy sci-fi that dives into the hero's journey. Now this right here is the foundation that George Lucas built the entirety of Star Wars. But we have two other cases when we look at how George Lucas was inspired to make Star Wars. I want to get started with one of my favorites, and that is the Western format. And this is something that George Lucas heavily draws inspiration from. When asked about Westerns in Star Wars, this is what George Lucas had to say. I would always considered the Star Wars films Westerns. What made the classic Westerns of guys like John Ford great was that the stories they told were so simple that they ended up being deeply resonant and inspiring. And when you look at something like Star Wars, it has a very simple story. You go here, get the thing, save the princess. Princess actually saves herself, but you go through this whole arc, this whole hero's journey, which takes a lot of inspiration from the idea of Westerns. I mean, if you just look at Han Solo, he is clearly the Western gunslinger, smuggler dude that is in the Western movie that just got plopped up and put into Star Wars. And in Westerns, you often have a very clear good guy, bad guy story, something that people can very easily get into to take into the message, which for George Lucas was ideas of hope, ideas of longing, ideas of finding home and community, and fighting oppression. And if you really want to get into the weeds of things, George Lucas was making a very bold statement on the ideas of colonialism with the Empire and overreach of power. When he wrote this was around like the Vietnam War, and he was making a very bold statement that says, hey, America, that's the bad guys. Right now, this is what it looks like, and the little guys, they're gonna win. And on the other side of things, you have the inspiration that George Lucas so clearly draws from samurai films. Whether it's the lightsabers that they all wield, or Darth Vader's very samurai-esque armor, George Lucas was heavily inspired by directors like Akira Kurosawa. And if you go back and watch a lot of the scenes that Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker, all of these samurai-esque scenes that you'd see in Star Wars, if you go back and you watch those Akira Kurosawa films like The Seven Samurai or Yojimbo, you're going to see some almost shot-for-shot recreations. And it's not just the visuals that George Lucas drew inspiration from when we look at samurai films. The idea of finding redemption, of strength, and becoming a part of a community to do better, to save a village in the Akira Kurosawa films, or Star Wars' cases, the entire galaxy. There are some clear story beats that George Lucas draws when he built Star Wars. When we see a Star Wars movie that comes out, I think we need to see examples or inspiration from Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. I also think we need to have inspiration from the Westerns, as well as samurai films, and looking deep into what it means to have a war. Why are these people deciding to do what they're doing? But most importantly, we need to see hope. We need to see these characters find something that they can fight for that is greater than their own selves. Something that each and every person, whether it's for the right reasons or the wrong reasons, fighting for hope or against hope is a main theme of Star Wars. With the Empire, you're using the Empire's massive strength and sprawl across the galaxy to squash hope. And then you have this whole idea of the Force, which is this tool of hope, to find something that everyone, every living being, and everything in the galaxy has within them, to draw upon that and use it for good. That, I think, is one of the main things that you need to have with a Star Wars. You need to have character growth, the arc of the hero's journey, but most importantly, you need to tell a story about hope. Even in the darkest moments of Andor, the grittiest take on Star Wars that we've seen, there's still hope. These people are fighting for something, and we see every little bit of that journey. So, is Star Wars losing its heart and soul? I'd say in some cases, maybe. But it's a very personal journey. If something gives you hope and gives you joy and gives you something that you can find love in, I don't think it's failed at being a Star Wars movie. But that's my take. Let me know your thoughts on this whole idea of what makes a Star Wars movie in the comments below. And as always, check out our podcast, and may the Force be with you.